Hi, this is Alex from PHP Academy, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at displaying images from a specific directory. Now, just before we start the tutorial, there's a few things that we need to take into consideration when displaying images from a directory. Now, if you're going to be using this for things like perhaps an image sharing website, or you have a user that's able to upload a collection of files and they are placed in a specific folder, you may have other files amongst your in your directory amongst your images. So we need to take into consideration a few things. Now, the first and foremost thing is to actually go ahead and check if the specified directory exists. Let's say you had a database with users that could upload images. You might have a directory that's based on their user ID. We won't get into that too much and confuse things, but generally we need to make sure that a specific directory exists before we actually start to scan that directory for files. The second thing is that when you are scanning through files, you'll output a dot and a double dot, and this is just based on directory structure and how directories are formed in terms of files, or at least how PHP reads these files. So we need to filter these out. We also want to go ahead and filter out unwanted files, so files that don't have an image extension, basically. If we just take a look at the result of the tutorial first of all, I've got 3 images in my directory amongst a couple of other files. And you can see these have literally just been displayed out. There's one here, one in the middle over here, and then one to the left hand side. These have just been displayed out really just next to each other, but it's up to you really to go ahead and format it how you want. Let's go ahead and look at the actual directory that we're reading from. It's a directory called images, and this is inside my root directory here. We've got index.php, which is the file that's actually going to output the images, and we've got this images directory here which contains the 3 images that we've seen in my browser, but we've also got an htaccess file and a document.txt. Now, document.txt, you probably won't find other documents within a file of such, but if you did do, then you don't really want to output them as an image. htaccess is probably a more commonly found file inside of a directory. You'll probably want an htaccess file in here anyway to perhaps prevent viewing of this directly through the browser. So we need to make sure that when we loop through each file in a specific directory, we want to filter out these 2 files and only keep files that have a specific file extension. So we can do that quite easily in PHP, and this tutorial isn't really going to contain too much code at all. So now that that's done and you've seen the result of the tutorial, and we've spoken about them few points that I brought up here in my text editor, we can go ahead and get on with the tutorial. Okay, so I have completely removed all the code from index.php, and in our browser you see that we don't have anything displayed. So we're at our sort of starting point. Now, the first thing we want to do is create a variable that's going to specify the particular directory that we want to read from. And in this case, as I showed you earlier, this is the images directory. So essentially what we're going to do here is just create a variable, and I'm going to call this dir. And in here what I'm going to do is type in the name of the directory. I've tabbed this over because we're going to be creating something under here and we just want to keep it tidy. So I've just specified the image or the directory name without any slashes or anything like that. I don't really think it matters. I think you can add slashes, but if it's just a single directory, obviously there's no need to. Now, what I want to do now is go ahead and create an array, which is a collection of data for the files that I want to accept. Now, I'm only going to be using the sort of 3 main types of files, or 3 commonly found web files, which are JPEG, PNG, and GIF. So I'm going to be creating an array with these, and this is just going to serve the purpose of checking whether the current file that we're looping through in this directory exists as one of these files. So don't worry too much about this now, but we'll be going into it a bit later on. So I'm going to call this file display, and this is basically going to be an array. And in here we're going to specify the, obviously like I said, the file types that we want to accept. So the first one I'm going to do is JPEG. The second is going to be JPEG as well, but this time with an E because some files are named JPEG, PNG, and again lastly GIF. So now that we've done that, we know that we can access this array a bit later on when we're looping through our directory, and we can check that our file type is one of these. Don't worry too much about uppercase file types, because we're going to be dealing with that a bit later with the str to lower function in PHP. Okay, so the first point on my list was to check whether this file actually exists. So we're going to go ahead and create an if statement, or outline an if statement. And inside of the condition, we need to use the file_exists function to ensure that this directory exists. So I'm going to use file_exists, and inside here I'm going to give the directory name. So this is dir. Okay, so I want to make sure that this is equal to, or I want to make sure that this exists. So the first condition is going to be if this equals false. So if this does equal false, it means that the directory is not found. So I'm going to go ahead and just echo out a message to our users just to let them know that the directory is not found. This is more for back-end work. If you were to accidentally specify an incorrect folder name, you would see this message as well as your users, but it just allows for a more friendly way to let you know that the file doesn't exist. So I'm just going to say directory, and I'm going to put an X there for now, but we're going to sort of echo out this variable in just a moment, and I'm just going to say not found, so an exclamation mark at the end. So in here what I'm going to do is I want to put the directory name in single quotation marks, so I need to escape this data. Now inside here I can specify the name of the directory, so I'm just going to break up this string, and comma separating that I'm just going to write dir. So we've got this string here, directory, and then a little semicolon which has escaped, then a comma, then dir, so the directory name that we're trying to access, then another comma, and then I finish the rest of the string. So otherwise we want to carry on with the process of looping through this directory because the directory has been found. So for now I'm just going to echo out, say found, and let's just get rid of that down there. Okay, so let's go ahead and preview this in our browser. At the moment I'm using the file name, or the folder name images, so we know that that exists. So we have this message here, found. Now if I go and change this, for example image, we may have sort of mistyped this, and I press refresh, it says directory image not found. So you can see the result of the if statement. Now if we didn't have this if statement in, and we were using the scan dir function, which we're going to use in just a moment, it would return an error, a nasty looking error message. So you want to try and keep it as user friendly as possible if your users are seeing this message, and for yourself as well, I guess it helps. So what we're going to do is we are going to specify or create a new array, which is dir contents, and here we're going to be using the scan dir function. Now I'll tell you a bit about the scan dir function in a moment and what it does, but basically inside here we're just going to take one parameter, which is the directory, that's dir that we specified up here, so image is, just to make sure that loads properly. Now scan dir is going to take the list of files from the specified directory, which is images, and it's going to place it into an array. So to be able to see this properly, we can use print r, and this is just going to give us a textual representation of the array that's been generated by scan dir. So dir underscore contents in there. Now we can go ahead and just refresh, and you can see that now we have an array with obviously the keys just here, and then the list of files in here. Now you see that the first file that's been found is this dot here, and then the second here is this dot here. So obviously we have the problem that you know, we don't want to display these as images. There's absolutely no point. This is just sort of directory structure standards, I guess. So what we want to do is a bit later on we want to make sure that these we sort of filter these on the fly to make sure we don't display images here. Now there are a number of ways that we can sort of filter these out of the array. We could use the unset command, and we could unset, for example, dir contents 0, and then we could do the same for the first key as well. When we go ahead and print that again, so again print dir contents, you'll see that these have disappeared. So you can do that as well. We can filter out specific elements of an array, but for now I'm going to do it on the fly because that sort of duplicating code looks a bit messy.